And if there's anything arising from those minutes, we've got the representatives from the zone committees here this morning to speak, and that brings us to items 9, 10, 11 and 12. So I'll welcome the zone committee members to come to the table. We've got Les Wilhola and, sorry, who have we got there? Gina. And Kevin Brown is coming back in. So Gina, Deputy Chair, Banks Peninsula. Les is Selwyn Waihora, Zone Committee member, and are you chair out there? Co-chair. And Kevin Brown from, he's the chair from the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee. So welcome guys, thank you very much for coming in and speaking today. So do you want to just perhaps talk us through the highlights of your reports? And either of you can go first. Who would you like? Gina, okay, cheers.
So the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee has continued to be active this year. We were able to continue over lockdown and we've been back up and running since. Some key highlights are we've recommended funding for 4 excellent immediate steps projects. There is great uptake for those that fund on Banks Peninsula, but that does mean we continue to get more applications than the $100,000 available can fund. The Whakaora Healthy Harbour Plan has been progressing well with good tie-in to the community and community groups like reserve committees through the Community Advisory Group. The main project that's currently underway is the restoration of Steadfast Stream in Cass Bay with recent clearing of willows and poplars and a planting day held this month. The upper reaches are already protected and we're working to make this stream restored ki-uta ki-tai from the mountains to the sea. Similarly, a planting day was held at Kokararata in Port Levy, which will also see Kokararata stream protected ki-uta ki-tai with a covenant in the upper reaches and the lower reaches fenced and planted. These projects that restore and protect waterways along their length are deliberate. The Zone Committee is seeking to work a bit more strategically, and we recognise that the biodiversity and water quality benefits are often not realised until the whole waterway is treated ki-uta ki-tai. So this will allow us to showcase those waterways, to show what can be done, and hopefully provide evidence that the treatments we're implementing are effective. We're still developing this concept further and hoping that by focusing on priority catchments, we can achieve greater buy-in from the community and also open up opportunities for more co-funding from other organisations. I've seen the success of this approach firsthand with the Whakaora Head of the Harbour project, which saw pretty much every landowner on the Allendale stream attend a shed meeting with willingness from everyone to be involved. Previously, a lot of our projects have been ad hoc, treating only a small part of a waterway, especially when trying to be fair about allocating the money geographically. As a committee, we've welcomed Rick Tainui as the Runanga rep for Onuku, and this year we've had Lan Farm as our Ekan councillor rep and Irena Riddle as our youth member to provide a voice for youth. We're continuing to work on engaging with the community through events and through contact with landowners through the zone delivery team, and we plan to hold an event on carbon farming, the emission trading scheme and planting for erosion control with beef and lamb on October 9th. The main item that I wanted to draw your attention to today is the roadside cuttings trial, which is mentioned in both the annual and quarterly reports. This trial looks at a range of techniques to reduce erosion from roadside cuttings, including rock tows, planting along the top of the cutting, and various planting and substrate options that are applied to the face of the cutting. And that's then monitored over 3 years to assess the effectiveness of the different components. This trial is very important to the Zone Committee, to Whakaora and to Ngāti Wheki in Rapaki. We appreciate that Council has agreed to continue to fund the existing trial site in the Christchurch Adventure Park and understand why budgets have tightened, resulting in the other 2 proposed trial sites not being funded at this stage. However, these exposed roadside cuttings have existed for decades. Many people have been pushing to have them remediated for a long time with little traction, and these trials were seen as a way forward as a lack of evidence has often been cited as a reason for not doing anything about them. So whether more trial sites are funded or the findings from the current trial site are used to develop a work program, that could work either way. But we would really like to see a plan and a time frame for addressing these cuttings so that action can be taken in the harbour within a reasonable time frame. That's all from me.
Thank you. So, Kevin. Oh, or Les, sorry, you go. Les. Yep. Yep. Welcome, Kevin.
Since this is
Oh, it's
the
Kevin.
first meeting for this year, I'd like to mention the successes that we had last year. Firstly, we ran a series of bus trips which traced a drop of water from the intake right up as far west as you can go. For the protection zone, we traced that series of drop of water right through to Christchurch's drinking water. And we finished at Bell Creek and we talked about the urban stream syndrome, and we looked at the treatment station that we've got at Richardson Terrace. These were extremely well attended. They were, everybody was very pleased to talk, and a lot of people were quite surprised to see how where their water came from and how it comes out of the Waimak area into the ground. So that was very successful. We had about 70 people, and we'd like to run some more of those again next year. We became the first signatory to the Community Waterways Partnership Charter in August last year. Pleased to see that the City Council joined in December 2019, and ECAM and the councillors are considering the opportunity to join next month. We ran sediment workshops to educate construction people about the work in Port Hills and how the impact of the East Coast is sediment, and how to prevent this and how to clean up the East Coast. These were extremely well attended and they were appreciated very much by the construction industry. One of the most important things we did, I think, is to raise awareness about the possibility of low nitrates in colorectal cancer. There's a correlation that's been published, and there is a definite correlation between colorectal cancer and much lower nitrate concentrations than are currently presented by the WHO. The current limits are about 11.3 nitrogen part per million, and they were seeing these effects of an increase in colorectal cancer at levels of 1 ppm. Now, this is important for Christchurch because under Plan Change 7, where the water is coming underneath the Waimaka area into the groundwaters for Christchurch's drinking water, the limits that they are working towards in the 30-year plan are 3.8 parts per million of nitrogen. So we're quite pleased. We wrote a letter to the Ministry of Health. We got one letter back that was very stable, saying we know what we're doing. They eventually appointed, after we wrote another letter, they appointed a scientific advisor to the Minister of Health, and he came up with a recommendation, and now they've freed up some money for Otago University to do a study, or it's a research study on the correlation between colorectal cancer and nitrate levels in Canterbury. So this is important not only for Christchurch City, but also for all of Canterbury Plains, where most of the farmers and people living in the country are living with wells, and the private wells are never tested, and some of them have very large nitrate levels. So that is an important issue. We got a remit passed last year at the local body conference to reduce the copper in the brake pads of cars. This is the main source of copper in stormwater that we use up in our streams. We had lots of stormwater superhero appearances at community gatherings, and we awarded 6 industries with awards for their work in coping with stormwater. So that was very nice as well. So recent highlights this year, we've only had 2 meetings and workshop because of COVID. We had a workshop on biodiversity funding, and we decided to introduce the concept of having a priority catchment that would receive a large proportion of the biodiversity funding. in order, in order to make significant changes to that particular catchment. And while we're doing that, we're still keeping a rebate back to encourage work in other catchments in following years. One of the big things, we set up a working group comprising zone committee members from the Cashmere Stream Care Group and the Pawaho Heathcote River Network and the community boards. These meet once a month, and we already have a submission from them. They meet once a month, and they're working towards cleaning up the stormwater in the Heathcote, particularly the sediment. And they are working towards it, and there will be a more focused series of suggestions coming to the council as a result of these meetings very soon. Finally, we gave a very special honorary Stormwater Superhero Award to Evan Smith, who was unfortunately not very well at the moment for his work on the Aotearoa Asian River. He's proved he has been, still is a true champion for the river, and he's appeared many times before the zone committee for his work for the Asian.
Thank you, Kevin. Les.
I take my report as read and welcome any questions on it. There's just a couple of three highlights I'd like to point out. Over the last year, we did a lot of community and youth work in our zone and trying to find their money. We took our meetings around the Rohi, but unfortunately there wasn't very much participation by the community. We're hoping to work on that for a bit more highlighting through council, especially Southern District Council, where they can highlight what the zone committee is about. And we might get a few more community members at our meetings. The first part of the year, it's been a real funny year. We've only had 2 or 3 meetings for the whole year. Up to now with COVID-19 and that, but they've been very effective meetings, and the fact that we are now looking from not so much what's happened in the last 10 years, that was the setting up the zone committees. We're now wanting to look what can happen, what can come from those 10 years to make the real improvement. We have a co-chair situation. New co-chair lived alongside myself, was Fiona McDonald. She's a community worker and community representative, and she really specialty is working with the community groups. Last year was meeting hands, and myself and Megan took the farm side of it, and I took the greening side of it, and that worked really well. And I think this, with Fiona being there, it's going to work even better to have that communication with the community. We approved a heck of a lot of immediate steps. We put our whole budget out last year, and we're certainly well on the way to blowing it out this year. In fact, we probably had more applicants than we had money. It's unfortunately that the money dropped over the last couple of years, and you couldn't carry any money forward. Once you don't spend it, you're easily. But that's something that happens. We did a lot of plantings with the Gerard Kakariki. You look at the maps that we got, and you can see that there are hundreds of thousands of trees planted from the Alps right through to the wetlands.
Sorry to interrupt, Liz. Can you please put your microphones on because we can't pick it up on the live stream? Just push the button, any button. Yeah. It's not on. It's got, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, now we're there.
Apologise for that interruption.
And that's what I was saying. I've been involved with these schools going out and planting. It's just fantastic to see how much the children do enjoy planting. In fact, when we go out to a site, we'll have 3 or 4 stations would have weaving, water ecology and planting or something else. But all want to do the planting. don't want to do the other stuff. But it's really fantastic working with them.
Yeah.
We've discussed the Huratini halls or stormwater management with Paul Dixon. We weren't quite sure where the Huratini halls will fit into our zone. We knew where the majority it was, but we've since found out that the whole of the Huratini is in the Selwyn zone, of its Selwyn responsibility, not necessarily in the zone. So we want to get Paul back sometime and discuss where what we can do to help the sediment and stuff in the Huratini. I'd like to Tiara wetlands. I've been out there, I've been involved with it right from the start, and just out there last week with a couple of schools, and it's a fantastic area now operating. The water unfortunately is quite low in the Huratini at the moment, so there's not much water flowing through. But if you ever have an opportunity to go out there, it's at the end of Nels Road at the Motakara. Just walk along the rail trail and have a look at it. It's a real nice area. Thousands of plants been put in. So this is something we're really looking forward to. It's been a prominent Mahunga Kai site in the future. Welcome any questions.
Oh, really good reports. Thank you very much. The just a question. The Hayton stream flows into the Huratini, doesn't it?
Sorry?
The Hayton stream that flows into Huratini, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's a lot of all those streams, right from Providon, actually from Springs Road, is where Huratini starts.
Yeah, right.
Hayton stream flows into
The Heathcote. I always get them mixed up.
I thought it was like
Right, thank you. Hey, well, thank you for those really good reports. I just want to pick up on the roadside cutting trial that you mentioned, Gina, and whether you've read the rest of our report. It has been funded for the annual plan, and it will be an LTP matter if we want to take that further, and we manage to find the funding for that. So we probably can't give you do you want to plan in a time frame for the second and third, or for this first one?
So the first one in the Christchurch Adventure Park, I understand that that's being funded and going ahead and will be completed. So it was more a question around, given that the additional 2 trial sites that were identified are currently not being funded, it was just a question around what happens next.
Yeah, okay.
Just to make sure that it doesn't, that we don't just have this one trial site that is at the Adventure Park, it's not actually in Whakaraupo. And we want to make sure that something is done to address those roadside cuttings.
Yes, and I understand that. So I'm just wondering how we won't be able to give you an update until our LTP is signed off, really. So, but if we make a note of that to keep the Bank Peninsula Committee informed about that progress, I think that's the best we can do at this stage.
Yeah, thank you.
So, are there any other questions for the committee? Yanni?
Is this from all the committees, or you just...
For any of them, yep.
So I was just quite alarmed to see the issue around sediment and erosion control, and we're being asked to talk to our staff over that, and I just wondered if you could. So we're being asked to communicate to staff that the Cashmere Stream Port Hills catchments that drain into Cashmere Stream be considered a priority catchment when carrying out building inspections, processing consents, deciding on consents to be prioritised for monitoring. I was just really, I guess, trying to understand a little bit more specifically around what it is that we're not doing, and why that hasn't been more of a priority, if you've been given any reason.
So can I just interrupt you, because I spoke to Kevin before this, and there is a word missing from that resolution, and it's the word compliance. Should be considered a priority compliance catchment area. So would you like to speak to that, Kevin?
I wasn't actually present at the meetings. What we're looking for is just to treat the Heathcote as a priority for compliance. That's more.
But, okay, I guess what I'm trying to understand, like, given that I've been raising this for about 3 years now,
Yeah.
and certainly since the Port Hill fires,
Yeah.
why isn't this happening? Have you been given any reason why it's not a priority?
The Cashmere Working Group the Cashmere Working Group
Come up to the microphone, Shelley. Thank
The
you.
Cashmere Working Group of the Zone Committee will be coming back to you within the next couple of months with some more specific recommendations. We have been given an update by City Council and Environment Canterbury staff, and that will form the basis of those recommendations that the working group is working on next Tuesday.
Okay, well, just I guess a follow-up question. Are there cases where council's enabling works to happen without the appropriate conditions of consent? Is that really what is at the heart of this issue?
The issue has many, many factors ranging from consent conditions to capability of staff and contractors in the industry, as well as how things may, there's different laws that the City Council use and ECAN uses, and all sorts of different factors relating to both regulation and non-regulation.
Okay, and can I just check, is there any council consents that you're concerned with or you've identified as being a reason for concern?
Probably not the best reason to talk about that, but I think there probably has been some concerns about water coming from the bottom of Cashmere Valley Drain around Cashmere Estates.
Okay. Well, can I just ask, I mean, we've got a report later on today which does touch on one of those. I think, can we actually do something about this? I just find it incredible that we're relying on a community group to tell us stuff that we've been raising at a governance level repeatedly.
So the recommendation is that we communicate this issue with staff. Shelley's just told us that there's more work to be done on this, I believe. Yeah, is that correct? And it's about, from what I hear, it's about joining up the two organisations so that we're both resourced and we're working together more efficiently with all these issues like the inspections, the consenting and processing the consents. So I'm not sure what more we can really do. Shelley,
Isn't this bread and butter like what council should be doing? Like when we approve consents, we should monitor them.
It's both councils. Okay. So we're trying to work together on that.
And I think that's really important. It's actually us working with ECAN to work out whose responsibility is sitting where and who's got those powers. But recognise also that and Helen will report on that when she brings her, we are doing a huge amount of work at the bottom of the Catchmere stream to actually look at capturing silt, and that work is still in progress, and I'm not sure when it will do, but certainly she'll be able to give you an idea of what we're doing at the global scale. But this basically, I think, is discussions around inspection of building sites and all that sort of thing, which we are working with.
So shouldn't we be referring this to the Regs and Consents Committee? And given that they're supposed to be doing an audit, which I've been told is no longer happening, of consents, shouldn't we actually be asking like one or two of these Port Hill subdivision type consents get put into an independent audit so that we can have confidence that we're acting appropriately?
Well, this report is asking us to communicate this to staff, so that staff could be the compliance team or the consenting committee, if you want, and that might be appropriate. So what we can do, these are the zone committee recommendations. We can bring our own recommendations out of this that we choose to pick up if we like. So I'm happy to do that if everyone else is okay.
I think we should ask for a report on what is actually being done, because it's not correct that nothing's been done. There is an element of being done by ourselves and by ECAN, and in actual fact they may come up with an idea of what's been done and how it could be enhanced, and we are at all levels of the organisation in those discussions quite significantly. We've and a lot of that was also incorporated when we got the comprehensive stormwater consent. A number of those conversations continued. So it's not correct that nothing's been done. It's a matter of how do we get the best value and the best controls in making it clear to people what they need to do.
Well,
So what-
councillors will
so-
be aware of the other email that we got today or last night, and I think people are becoming increasingly concerned at the way in which we're doing consenting and monitoring. But I wondered whether we also need to adopt the same resolution to go towards ECAN, or maybe the zone committee does that as well.
The zone committee reports
So
to
have they
ECAN.
put the same wording, communicate to ECAN staff around this being a priority catchment?
Is that correct? Have you sent these recommendations to the
They will go to, yes, they go to.
Thank
ECAN.
you, that's
Yes.
good. So I suggest that rather than a report, Dave, that this committee requests a memo from staff on the
What's been done and what.
What-
It needs to be an independent
the
audit.
current state of what's been done and what has been planned to be done around sediment control and enforcement, and then also to refer the zone committee recommendation 3A to the consenting committee. What's it called? Reg and consent? Reg and compliance, isn't it? What's it called?
Yes. David will get the words right. Won't you, David?
Thanks, Yanni. Anne?
Good, Kevin, Gina and Liz, thanks for coming in. I'm interested, Kevin, in that you have extremely well attended meetings, and I'm wondering what you're doing that's encouraging people to come along, because it's one of the struggles I think we certainly do have with, as Liz was saying, getting people along, and it would be great to just understand a bit about what you do.
Ooh.
Is it the food?
Could very well be the food. I don't honestly know. We try to keep in touch with the community, and we spend a lot of time being present at community activities like Meet in the Middle, things like that. And I think that's probably it. We do try to keep in touch with the community.
And how do you do that? Do you through local newspapers, or what
No,
sort of things do you do?
no, mainly by personal attendance with zone committee members through all sorts of community organisations. Yeah, it's something we're trying to branch out so that we find at the moment we're preaching to the choir, and we'd like to reach the people that aren't in the choir and have a bit more of an education campaign for stormwater and river water and so on. So we're trying to put together a communications package that we can get to the people that don't come to the meetings in particular.
That would be terrific. Once you've got that done to share that, that would be very good and helpful, I'm sure.
Well, it seems to be quite difficult, really, getting hold of the people that you really want to educate. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, so are there any other questions? Because we've got some wording up. Oh, Melanie?
More for staff around the video, like how likely is that to happen?
Sorry?
I've got a question for staff around creating the short video about the Cashmere Stream and the work that's been happening with land
Oh,
drainage.
yeah. We've already got one or two videos. We're going to...
We've got a couple of videos about the work that we've been doing, particularly around the Cashmere Stream. So we're going to distribute those to the zone committee and then see what we could do in the way of enhancement. I think one of the issues that we've got potentially is how do we promote them more out into the market, but there may be other things that we can fill in. And we certainly do videos as we progress work, but again, it's something that we're absolutely willing to show what we've got and then see how we can enhance that. So,
Yeah. But those videos are good. I think they're really helpful. Liz?
There's you probably know, there's one thing very important I forgot to mention in my report. The Central Plains Waikirikiri recharge is returning their taps on next month. I don't remember the precise date to see how that system works. It's very important that we get something water flowing evenly down to Waikirikiri and to Te Waiora, and I think it's a very important stage where we get to actually turn the taps on and get that water flowing.
Yeah,
to
so that's
enhance the
actually,
Waihere.
that's from the Central Plains storage system, and that,
No, not from the storage, direct from the pipe, from the Rakaia through to the system. There's a pipe halfway along,
yeah,
big opening gates, and we just go there and turn the taps on. It floods a bit of an area that then drains down into the gravel and stones and all that, and goes into actually shallow water this type of thing,
yeah.
and this flows along to the river, and we're not directly mixing water that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to bring the level, especially when it's going to go on in the winter more than summer. But the time it gets down
So it
to
builds up.
down to Code Ford, Chamberlain's Ford, and that, it's going to be early summer, so it's going to enhance all the whole area right along.
Well, there'll be a lot of people very pleased to see that water back there.
Oh, we've been working on it for a long time.
That's significant. Thanks for mentioning that, Les. That's great. Okay, so there are no more questions. We've got a couple of... Should we put a couple of recommendations up in response? So we've got one there, number 5. And I'd just like to...
Actually need an independent audit. Like, we need to have confidence at a governance level that, I mean, everyone got the email last night, right, from someone around, I mean...
So you want an independent audit on what?
We absolutely need an independent audit
On what?
on our consenting process around earthworks, particularly around sediment and erosion control.
I want to do that first of all, Yanni, and then they can perhaps come back to us with a comment. So I recommend that we request a memorandum from staff. There we go. I was around the commission. I think the zone committee refer the zone committee recommendation 3A to the Reg and Performance Committee. And then can we put a note at the bottom that staff update the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee regarding the second and third trial on the, what's it called? Bank. What's it called, Gina? The bank?
The roadside cutting.
Roadside cutting, thank you.
So just to put it in context, a student project previously identified that there are about 4 high priority cuttings in the harbour and about 9 sort of moderate high. So we're talking about trial sites, but
Yeah.
you know there are sort of 10 to 15 that
Yeah, I know.
really could do
We'll
with
see how
some
we go with the
treatment.
second and third trial on the roadside cutting after the LTP has been signed off, after the City Council LTP has been signed off. And then, and 7, request staff to formally respond to the Zone Committee recommendations.
I just wonder if that first one would be better to actually report back to them about the results of the first trial and how that will be carried forward. And it may be carried forward into a second and third trial. It may be carried forward actually into some change of practice that we do. It may go forward into our subdivisional standards so that we do it. I just wonder whether we're better to actually report back a bit broader than just that, say the results and how that will be brought forward and what we're going to carry into the LTP,
Okay.
because I think
So-
it might be more than...
That's fine. So let's
Does that
put
make sense?
That sounds
6, that staff report back to the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee on the results of the first trial.
And where to from here, and possibly,
Well, that will be part of the update.
Yeah.
Report back to the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee on the results of the first road cutting site trial, and then leave the rest of it in there too.
Will we want the report back to our committee as well, this committee?
it'll come through to you. I'm not sure, Helen, whether it comes through in the 2-monthly report, but it will come back to you in some form, and I think it'll come back to this committee rather than, because it is a water initiative, even though it's on the roading network.
No, respond to the zone committee on their recommendations. And no, that staff formally respond to the zone committee on their recommendations.
Yeah.
Does that? It's just giving them a response that we've received and everything. Andrew.
Item 6, is that subject to update, or is that what we've got there as the item 6 that we're about to, is that what's on the table, or is it something different just after the advice that Dave gave? Because what's actually needed here is a report back on the results of the first trial,
Yep.
so that can then inform either a change to the way that we manage roadside cuttings based on the results of that first trial, or the need for a second and third trial. Whereas what we've got here
So do you want
assumes
to
there's going to be a second and third trial. That's actually not the case. I mean, the ideal in many ways would be the first trial, say, informs the way we deal with roadside cuttings, in which case we want to implement those improvements immediately, and there may not be a need for a second or third trial. There may be a need for a second or third trial, in which case we'll have one and we'll fund one, or that's what the position of the zone committee would be. So I think what we need to do is to say there, staff report back to the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee on the results of the first trial as soon as possible, and advise next steps regarding implementation of the results and whether a second or third trial site is needed. Regarding how the results can be implemented.
Is needed and or funded? Because that's the issue too.
Well, I mean, I'd kind of take the view that the funding's a separate matter. Once we've determined the need, then we look at the funding. Regarding how the results can be implemented.
Well, that would be all in the reporting back. I don't think we need
I
to
want
call
it
that
specified here. I know there's a letter coming which is going to address exactly this issue, so it'll be good to have a resolution here that we can refer to when we reply to the letter that we know is coming.
All right, look, I just might bring Clive up. Thank you, Clive. If you could just get to near a microphone.
Can I just get that wording the way that I've asked for it to be, unless there's any objection to that? So just regarding how the results can be implemented. No, where you've got advise next steps regarding how the results can be implemented.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that represents reality, and it also allows us to address a matter which is going to be raised with the Chief Executive in a letter.
And take out of the results and leave the rest, is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, Clive, because there's 1, 2, 3 trials planned, are the second and third depending on the first, or were they always meant to happen anyway?
The reason that the trial is located in the adventure park is because the sites that were identified around the road on Littleton Harbour were found to be a health and safety issue with transport. To be able to put those trials in place and to monitor them. And also there was a concern about vandalism of those trials on a public roadside. So that's why the adventure park site was chosen in the first instance. And I would like to point that the trial that we have will be fully completed by June of next year, and the full report will be available in July. So if we're going to provide a memo in response to how the trial is going, we can give you an interim monitoring report of what we've currently got.
So that's going to be too late for any funding for the LTP if we're relying on the end result of that first trial, isn't it? So maybe an interim report might be enough for us to look at funding further trials and getting that money built in.
Correct. It can help us inform our final decisions as to where we want to go.
So when did you say there'd be an interim report ready?
Well, my understanding is that there's monitoring of the trial every 6 months. So we should be having I'll ask my counterpart, you can. Shelley, do you know when the next monitoring is? Okay, so we'll be able to have an interim report that covers the first year of the trial being in place.
By?
Whenever we can slot into the schedule, I would imagine.
Right, so it's sort of ready nowish. So
We should be able to get something, yes.
Okay, all right, well that's really helpful. So there will be an interim report, so how are we
So maybe
looking?
we need to reflect that in that resolution. I mean, one of two things. The zone committee would...
Interim results, yeah.
The zone committee would take a view that one of two things needs to happen here. Either a second or possibly third trial needs to be funded in the LTP, or the way that we manage roadside cuttings to reduce sedimentation needs to be taken account of in the LTP.
Yep.
So it's one or the other.
Yep.
What
So
we don't want is to get to the end of the first trial and then nothing happens.
So I think we've captured that in that resolution. Andrew, you happy with that now? And thanks for your help with that.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there are any other questions, do we have a mover for the recommendations? Sarah? Seconded? Melanie? All those in favour say, any debate? Yanni?
I just want to touch on the sediment issue because as someone who has watched the Pauaho Heathcote River, it is really obvious that there's a huge issue with sediment. And, you know, I just think as a council, we need to start taking these things seriously. Like, in my view, it's completely unacceptable the length of time we've taken to do more around that sediment runoff, particularly after the Port Hill fires. So, I mean, I guess I'm happy that the zone committee has drawn this to our attention, but I'm disappointed that they've had to do that when this has repeatedly been raised as an issue, and it feels like we're still at sort of starting blocks of actually doing anything constructive about it. But I think the other thing is we need to understand that sometimes because of our culture as a council, it's hard for us to be critical of things that we do ourselves, and I think that's just normal kind of human behaviour. So sometimes having a degree of independence around an audit is actually a really important step forward. And, you know, think of the Ombudsman's report into transparency and so on. So, you know, it's not to criticise staff, but it's really simply trying to get a new approach to actually looking at what we need to do, ensuring that it's resourced properly, because I just cannot accept that as a council that's constantly said, you know, the Heathcote Pauaho and our water quality is a priority, that we would be in a situation today where we're now being asked to make one of these catchments a priority because it seems clear that there's something not quite right about what we're doing. I know that sediment control and erosion is difficult, but actually given that we got this email last night from a planner, I think there's a number of concerning things. And, you know, in conclusion, this council asked for a regular audit of our consents to ensure that we were doing best practice and not having gaps in what we were doing. And that project, as I understand it, still hasn't been complete, may not have even been started, and I've been told the budget was cut. So, you know, if we want to improve and be a world-class council and do things properly, I think we do need the ability to look at ourselves and constructively look at where we're not meeting certain objectives and put in place measures that will. And so I feel really upset about this erosion and sediment issue because it has been repeatedly raised at a governance level around this table, council and committees, when we've had the zone committees coming in for at least the last 3 years, and we're only now saying to staff, make it a priority, which, you know, is very, very disappointing. So I look forward to what more we can do on this. We need to actually get on top of it. It is not acceptable for the sort of runoff that's happening, and we just really need to step up our game.
Thanks, Yanni. Andrew, then Anne.
Yeah, I certainly agree with many of the comments that Yanni has made regarding erosion and sedimentation. And as Gina mentioned, in the context of the health of Littleton Harbour, this is something that's been raised by community members and people on various working parties for many, many years. We're currently running this trial in the Adventure Park, which will inform the way that we deal with our roading assets, and in particular roadside cuttings, which are a significant source of sedimentation that finds its way into the harbour. We are a signatory and a partner in the Whakaora Healthy Harbour Whole of Harbour Catchment Management Plan. That document identifies that sedimentation runoff from our road assets, and in particular from these roadside cuttings, is a significant source of sedimentation ingress into the harbour. So, you know, the reason for my particular focus on Resolution 6 there is so that the trial that we are running actually finally brings about some benefit and an improvement in the health of the harbour, because we're taking steps to reduce the sedimentation runoff from our own roading assets, leading by example, and actually contributing meaningfully to the work that we've signed up to as part of the Whakaora aspirations, and as a responsible manager of our own assets.
I agree, thank you. Anne?
Kia ora. I just wanted to I guess commend the Zone Committee in terms of the focus on engagement and education. I think it's really important that, particularly with our young people, to get them involved at these sort of grassroots type activities, and getting them to know about their waterways and to taking responsibility for them. And it would be great to really focus on that, I think, and strengthen the partnership with the Clive's initiative, and really work together. I think that's the way forward. So thanks for the work that you're doing there, and I look forward to hearing a little bit more about how we can encourage and support each other as zone committees in that work. Sharing information would be good. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Anne. Yeah, look, I mean, these are huge problems and huge issues, and I don't think we should be begging our own organisation or other organisations. We've got massive challenges with pollutants and contaminants in water, and in our Christchurch city, a lot of it is historical, and things were not done right in the old days, and we're cleaning up, and the zone committees do a lot of that cleaning up, and the communities are cleaning up, and I really want to thank you guys for coming and giving us your time today and speaking to us. I think it's really valuable. I think we're all starting to work together really, really well. And I'd like to read out something that you've written as well, which is, at its February meeting, the Zone Committee also heard about the substantial efforts undertaken by the Christchurch City Council, the Parks and Landscapes team, with bank stabilisation and naturalisation to the Cashmere Stream, which in conjunction with the committee's immediate steps funding is helping the Cashmere Stream Group to restore native riparian cover and improve native biodiversity around the stream. And the committee wishes to thank the Christchurch City Council for its contribution to this work. And thank you for those words. I think we've really got to recognise what each other is doing. We're doing it all together, and we are making progress. And we've got to keep that in mind. But at the same time, we do have to keep our eye on the ball, and I think the compliance one is something that we've raised today through your report. So thank you very much. All right, on that note, I will put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. 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 Opposed? That's carried. Thanks again. All right, that takes us to item 14.